Back.
Okay.
So how are you doing, Jamila?
I'm doing well. We are live on the air, and Jared just disappeared.
So where is your room located, Jamila?
My room. It's I'm in my home office.
Okay,
I live in Maryland,
okay.
close to Virginia, so I'm always in Virginia. And your office is located in DC, right?
Yeah, we're down 19th and M. I'm at home myself right now.
Yeah. Like I want to have a conversation, but I know we're live on the air, so I'm trying to wait for Jared to come back.
All right, he'll be back.
It's a lot of silence. I don't like this dead silence. I did have a chance to check out your work, and I love it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm actually a brand strategist myself, so I mean, I love what you're doing. You're someone I look up to, and I've actually heard of your company before I heard of you.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
The word's getting out.
yeah.
And that wasn't just Jared, right?
No, no.
All right, so sorry for my little hiatus. I had to announce it to the world that we were doing this and provide some links via email. So welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's, let's see, it's Monday, December 1st, and it's the 6th episode of the DC Executive Hangout, and I'm Jared Gold, and this is my co-host, Jamila.
Hey, everyone.
All right, so really excited to have you all here, and feel free to share the link to the show with others or tweet about it using the hashtag DC Executive Hangout, and you can tweet questions to Jamila just at Jaiwiz, Jaiwiz. So yeah, so our guest tonight, really excited to have him. It's Chris Lester, who is the co-founder of Chief, and the URL for his company is mybigchief.com. And they're a branding agency in DC. And I had met Chris when he was teaching a class on branding at General Assembly at the 1776 campus. And Chief works with small as well as massive brands. I think I saw Hyundai and Disney. And Chris will cover the basics of how a company can create an effective brand identity and why they should do it. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Sure, and so as everyone can probably notice, Chris unfortunately doesn't have video, some slight technical errors, but he's a very charismatic guy, so pretend you can see his charisma along with hearing it. So anyway, so Chris, to start out, tell us a little bit about yourself, you know, your upbringing, your education, etc., and have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur?
So I think I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I started out my younger years, I was overseas in West Africa and in Iran, and then spent a little bit of my time growing up in Washington, D.C., where I went to a Waldorf school, and I think that had had a pretty big influence on sort of where I've taken things. And then was in a number of other places and went to an art school in New York called Pratt, and from there was in San Francisco for a while, and was in Atlanta for a while, and now back in New York, and then now DC, and DC's now home. Been here since the mid '90s.
Wow, I had no idea that you were in Iran. Or did you say Iran or West Africa?
Yeah, in Iran. Oh, I lived in West Africa. I lived in the Ivory Coast and in Nigeria, and then lived in Iran in Tabriz and Tehran.
What did your parents do? Like, how did that come to happen?
So my father was with the embassy, so he was a
Oh,
consul.
okay.
So yeah, so you know, we spent a little bit of time overseas before coming back to the States.
Wow, that is adventurous, that's for sure. Very unique background. And so, how did Chief get started, and what is your role there now?
So as you said, I'm a co-founder of Chief, and Chief is really a labor of love of mine. It's the kind of work that I've been doing, and the kind of work that I've really enjoyed doing since since leaving art school and working in a number of different companies in different capacities. Um, I'm also a part owner of another company called Rock Creek Strategic Marketing, which I took equity out of to start Chief about 3 years ago. And my partner Scott and I had gotten to a point where um, this was something that we just really needed to do. And I had been trying to do this there, but it's really hard with competing priorities to try to do something sort of radically different than the norm in a company that's established. And so we realized that it needed its own staff and it needed its own culture and its own space. And so we decided to make the leap, build a new brand, and hire the kind of staff that was aligned with what we were trying to achieve instead of trying to sort of retrofit ourselves into a staff that already existed.
I
And
mean,
you
makes
know,
sense. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. They,
Go ahead,
they're,
Jamila. You go ahead.
there are a ton of branding agencies in DC. So, why is Chief unique? How were you able to separate yourselves from other agencies?
So I think part of I mean, I think there are a lot of companies that are doing brand work. I think that there are fewer really focused brand consultancies, and that was how we positioned ourselves, from the start. And sort of I think one of the big differentiators for us, one was certainly we wanted to create our own brand that had the kind of impact that people would just inherently like it and be motivated by it. And so that was really the first objective in starting the company. Before we even hired people, really focused on developing our own brand and defining the culture that we wanted to have as we built the company. And then really the work that it really comes down, all of this work is down to the how you do it. There are a lot of people doing very similar kinds of work for very similar kinds of clients. And what we did is we just took every opportunity we had and gave it our all. So it didn't matter who the client was, what the kind of work was. We were going to shape it in a way that gave us a distinction. And there's certainly some specific things we do a little bit differently than others, but I think it's our personal experience and the group of people that we have, and this is the same differentiator I think everyone will point to, but it really comes down to how we all work together. And we've got people with MBAs, we've got people with full creative backgrounds, we have a pretty big mix of people, technical people, and together we're able to get into companies at the C level. And so we've been able to work much more as advisors at a high level than sort of creative consultants coming in at a mid-level at companies, and that's made a huge difference for us.
Absolutely. And I mean, the side benefit of you are able to charge more now too.
Absolutely.
That's a nice little plus as well. And so just getting into the main portion of the content, Chris, just starting off, I mean, how would you define what a brand is? I mean, how does a logo, a tagline, colors, etc., tie into it all?
So brand is really how you're perceived. Your brand is how you're perceived in the market. All of your identity, all of the tools that you use to communicate your brand. That's really your branding. But your brand is the promise that you're making to your audience and how you're following through on it, and then how they're perceiving that value that you're bringing. So all of the signals that you create, whether it's your logo, whether it's your color, whether it's any other how you use the channels that you market yourself with, all of those are just opportunities for you to magnify the promise that your company brings. And so, we look at, let's say, if we're working with a smaller company, we look at limiting the number of signals that are being sent to the market. So if it's, some of the tactical stuff like color, we'll look at using very few colors, having like a single dominant color that that can be associated with that company. Every decision that you make in the design process, whether everything from the type of fonts you choose to how you then design them in a way that makes them unique, all of those decisions to us are very strategic and have to align with what the objectives of your company are. And there are, there's a big, there's a pretty large space there to sort of work within, and but there certainly are decisions you can make that work against you, and then on the other end, you can make decisions around the kind of language you're using, and the kind of the tone you're setting, and how you're showing sort of the confidence of what you're bringing to the market. That can make it, can make a huge difference in how you're perceived and the success you have. And certainly with our company, we leaned heavily on all of those brand attributes to help quickly shape our position in the market and increase visibility. And some of those things where we chose yellow as our prime color, and it's because it's the first color that the eye perceives in the spectrum. And we wanted to use every little advantage that we could get to make our brand stand out and make it motivating. It's the same thing we do with all of our clients. A lot of the work we do is writing. Probably at least half of the work we do is around positioning companies and helping them helping them tell the kind of stories that that connect with their audiences in ways that sort of the objective features and functions cannot do alone.
Okay, great. I mean, right before Jamila jumps into the next question, one of the biggest points that I got out of that that I thought was interesting, not only, but it was also very uniquely told. And you said a brand is a promise, and I think that's like a really cool idea that people don't realize. I mean, when people think of brands, they think of maybe the color, the logo, the cheesy tagline, whatever. But a brand being a promise is more of an abstract idea. And I think in the workshop that I heard you talk about, you had said that all these other things, these visual attributes, were just vehicles for someone to perceive that intangible promise. So I thought that was a really cool and profound way to think about branding, and maybe listeners can use that going forward. Is forget the exact, does the logo look cool? Does the tagline sound good? Whatever. Think about the promise that you want people to have in their heads, that when they use your products or services, it's a contract, and you're promising to deliver on X, Y, and Z. So I like that. I thought that was good. A good tidbit.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what you said, Jared, I remember watching a TED Talk. It was months ago, but I think you know who I'm talking about. Simon Sinek, is that
Right.
how you pronounce
Yeah.
his name? And it's finding your why, and this is why Apple was able to create such a culture around their product, is because they were able to communicate their why to their audience, and it seems like that's what you're saying to do, correct?
Right, and I think and I think that was a really that was a great way to frame up that conversation. And it was really most companies communicate their value in the how, which is when you ask someone what they do, they're typically telling you how they do it. So if a company is technology comes and says, well, we do technology, or we do enterprise software. That's really how they go about doing what they do. What they're doing, if it's something for, let's say it's software for associations, then what they're doing is they're helping association realize their purpose. That's what they're doing, and how they're doing it is through software. And what you want to do with branding is move yourself out of that how space, because you don't want to talk about the software at the brand level. That's at a much more objective level, which is which is where you're just validating your decisions. You really want to be talking about the purpose of whatever it is you're doing at a much higher level, not at the very tactical level of what the thing itself is.
Yeah, and that's boring if you just talk about software. You gotta dig deep to actually resonate with your target audience. So, how did Chief end up getting to the level of having massive clients like Hyundai and Disney?
So one thing that where we've been very fortunate, I think this can apply to anyone, is that we never said no, and we took the opportunity when it came, especially early on. We had a number of those clients. We got the opportunity because either another company wasn't cutting it and they needed something done really, really quickly, and we had a connection. Some of these were very tenuous connections where it was a friend of mine who had a friend, and they said, this was how Disney happened. The Disney app that we created was someone else's project, and they were flaking out. And at the 11th hour, the folks in this department were starting to freak out, and so they were looking for anyone to bail them out. And so we took that opportunity, and we worked all night. We were multiple nights where we worked all night to pull it off, but it was an opportunity for us to prove it. And that's been the case with many of the bigger breaks that we've gotten, where we get the opportunity, and it may not be the perfect opportunity at the outset, but we turn it into that, and we've taken those opportunities and run with them.
Wow, okay, that's really impressive. Yeah, I was wondering how you broke into those massive markets because, like you said, your company is relatively new, even though you had been in this space with Rock Creek for a while, and they're a very, very credible company, and they work with a lot of big clients. I think that's really cool how you were able to get off to such a quick start as being the go-to person, not only to deliver, but to deliver in a very crunch time way on such a massive scale. I mean, an app by Disney, that's obviously going to be seen or used by hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people. So congratulations on getting that done. I know I would have been terrified. And so one question I think I've been wondering about, I don't know about Jamila, and that is, how realistic is a show like Mad Men in your industry? I mean, I know you're not in advertising, you're in branding, but how realistic is something like Mad Men?
So it's not really realistic to me. I'm not sure about others. There may be others who have more glamorous lives than I do. I mean, I've got a great life. I'm super happy. I work really hard. It's not that I'm, not prone to, all the stress and everything else. But I mean, last week alone, I've been speaking at a decent number of conferences, which I really enjoy. I spent 24 hours in Jamaica speaking at a conference down there last week. 2 weeks before that was out in Vegas speaking and doing those kinds. So getting around, having a good time, meeting a lot of people, still working really, really hard. It does not the same kind of glamour or the same level of drama. I'm happily married and have 2 little kids, and have a pretty outside of my urban work life, have a pretty suburban existence. But yeah, so I mean, I think there may be people out there who are younger people in the who are rising in in New York or Los Angeles or other global cities who have more of a whose lifestyles are reflective of that, probably a little more than mine.
Right.
But there are aspects of it, I think, on the positive side. Certainly in the pitches and things like that, where you really do have to put on the full show, and that's something that I find I find that very rewarding. I enjoy that, and there's some some things are some things are sort of, real to my existence, and other things are not so much.
That's awesome. And what are some of the best ways for entrepreneurs to help their company stand out from a brand perspective? How can they make their company stand apart from the pack?
So I think that for us, it's really important that the brand is understood, that there's clarity around the brand, and this is outside of trying to design a brand or take it to the market. I think internally, it's really important that you understand clearly what a company stands for, and less is more in that space. So there's always one clear there's one clear driving factor behind most companies that is often not articulated clearly enough. And I think that companies really should take a look at what they're bringing to their audiences and how they're doing that in a unique and differentiated way. What is it about them that is different than anyone else who their audience might have the opportunity to get similar services from, and magnify those in a way that exaggerates them way beyond what you think is normally comfortable. I know with, in building our brand and building others' brands as well, one of the things we do is we develop language, and it's really messaging, sort of simple statements that capture a much bigger concept. So if the concept is, right now we're working with General Wesley Clark in his consultancy, which is a financial consultancy, but it's really about a much bigger effect that they have, and so we're really driving from a sort of a tagline, this "We Build Effect," and then we've defined that really in its distinct sort of distinct aspects of how that applies to their work globally, how it applies to their partnering with companies nationally, how it applies to a number of different things. But it's an organizing principle. And I think that it's really that what's the key differentiator that a company has, and how do they then distill that into a message that can be made in a very confident way. And like our mantra is "Be brave," and it's something that we live as a company in our values, and it's also something that we challenge our clients to be. And it's big and it's bold. It's on the back of our business cards. It's anywhere you go in our context. That's the mantra that you're going to see, and many of our clients choose us because they like the fact that it's stated in a very confident way, and that they feel like there's an aspirational quality that they can attach themselves to.
So is it similar? So when you say a mantra, is it like a tagline, like Nike "Just Do It," or is it deeper than that? Does it mean you're embodying your core values, and you just made it simple into a tagline? Like, can you expand on that point a little bit?
Yeah. So for us, and I think that "Just Do It" is the same, the same kind of convention. It represents a lot, and it's just a signal to sort of open the door to a much bigger dialogue that the company will have. So for us, Be Brave, for me personally, when I started developing the brand, was I was taking equity out of a company that I was very comfortable in. I could have stayed there forever, and doing something that wasn't certain. And I have, I've got 2 kids. I've got a lot that, a lot of things relying on me. And I decided that I really needed to, follow the dream and embody, and have a tagline, a mantra, whatever we want to call it, that helped me, that every time I saw it, it sort of refocused me on what I was doing. And then at the same time, it also applies to our clients, or to anyone who wants to attach their own meaning to it. I had a client ask me for some of our Be Brave gear. Like, we have shirts and stickers and stuff like that, and it was for his brother-in-law who was being treated for cancer. And so we've seen our brand get spread in a lot of different ways. I've got pictures that people have taken of people wearing the shirts everywhere. People who I don't know. We had someone take a picture of a kid skating at a skate park that had our logo, a sticker, on the bottom of his deck, which was to me like the ultimate, sort of affirmation of that the brand is connecting. And that's what, we believe that brands should be inherently motivating, that there should be characteristics about a brand that are likable and that are aspirational and that have values that you can attach to, totally outside of what the business proposition is. And that's like Nike's "Just Do It." "Just Do It" is really a call to, like, get up off the couch, go for it, do it now, don't, no excuses. and it has nothing to do with the fact that they're shoes and gear and everything else, and that supports it. But the core claim is way beyond the gear.
Yeah, I agree with all that, and I stopped by your office, and I obviously have your business card and things like that. And I think your whole brand is excellent, and I feel like it's cool to look at, right? So I could see it being possible that like some skateboarder, has it on the bottom of their skateboard, right? Because they think it's cool. I mean, not only is it an attractive logo, but it does convey confidence. And "Be brave" is a cool tagline that you guys are very lucky to have. I think you said you have it like trademarked. And I don't know. I think one main thing is that it was just all very consistent. Like you said, it's exaggerated correctly to where when we talk and you're on this podcast on this hangout, and you're not speaking arrogantly, right? You're not over exaggerating your confidence, but you make sure that it comes through very clearly in your branding assets, in your office space and everything. So I think it's really cool, and I think it sends a very cohesive message. So you did a great job on that. And what would you say is the absolute biggest mistake that a company can make when it comes to branding?
I think the biggest mistake is positioning yourselves in a way that you can't live up to. And we see that. I mean, we have, we'll have, potential clients who will ask us to, exaggerate certain aspects of who they are or what their promise is in a way that they will never be able to live up to. And that's really, you have to be true to yourself. You have to figure out, who it is you are, what it is you do well, and you can be aspirational. You can set your brand ahead of yourself a little bit, but not too much. If that gap is too big, then companies fail because the expectations are much higher than what they can deliver on. And you see that in, we see that in a number of different ways, through, how companies are branding themselves and positioning themselves.
Do you have like a specific famous example of like a brand that overpromised and just completely underdelivered?
So I think there are tons of them. Boy, what's a good example of one? I think that one. I don't know why this is a little bit different than that. But one that's coming to mind is a sort of a dissonance in the promise, where whether it's like when the Susan G. Komen Foundation came out against Planned Parenthood and lost millions and millions of dollars of funding in the short term because it was their brand represented a very positive and very sort of communal position, and when they by making divisive remarks, they changed that dynamic in a second. I think that's the one, that's another sort of dimension of that, but that brands really are built on trust, and it takes one event of eroding that trust to set a brand way back or put it out of business.
Sure. Okay. No, that's a great example. And what would you say are tips on building? Obviously you're a creative. Chief is a creative agency. What are your tips on building such an effective business, and how did you find the right people and put together the right processes and things like that?
So I think that the first thing is that the passion has to be there. You have to really, really want to do it if you're going to do if you're starting your own business. And I think that the other, certainly, for me, I needed someone who had real business sense. My partner Anuj turned out to be that person. And he has a Harvard Business School degree, and just it was I met his sister at an Indian wedding, and that's how I ended up meeting him. It's all of this is everything is there's chance and how all of these pieces come together. But what I knew was that I understand the business. I don't love running a business. That's not my passion, not in the day-to-day. And so I knew that I needed to have someone who is passionate about that, as passionate about that as I'm about the work that I do, because otherwise it is really, really difficult to successfully run a business. And then bringing the people together. I mean, I was fortunate to be able to pull equity out of another company. I mean, that's not not everyone has that opportunity, but there are, capital is really not as hard to find as many think. It's really, capital isn't, it requires being, having your act really together to get it, and being really committed. And I think that anyone who's starting a business, if you just, you stick, do something that you're passionate about, and really stick with it, and just know that there are going to be 3 years of really, really hard work, where at times, certainly with Chief, there were multiple times when I thought we were going down, that we were going to fail. And those are really hard times to deal with. And I think the only reason I got through is because we had a staff, and we had, and there were a number of people relying on us. And if at that point, if it had been really early still, it would have been really easy to walk away and say, well, this is impossible. And it's just not impossible, but it takes that 3 years of real dedication. We pulled a lot of all-nighters. I can't even tell you how many all-nighters I pulled in the last 3 years. It was probably well over 20.
Wow.
Real all-nighters. I mean, staying up till past 2, 3 in the morning, that's pretty common. And that's what it takes. But if you have the passion, it drives itself, and the payoff is huge when the payoff comes.
I think your story isn't unlike any other successful entrepreneur. They have, the all-nighter story, I almost lost everything story, so there is that risk there for all entrepreneurs, but the rewards are way greater than the risks, in my opinion. And I think that's a great segue into the next question. What was one of the highest points of your career and one of the lowest points of your career?
So highest, I've had a few really, really, it's especially with Chief, and I think at Chief I've experienced the highest highs by far, and all of many of these experiences were experiences that were twists of fate. One was I spoke, this was a year ago. I spoke at a conference in Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is a closed country. I mean, there's not, there's no tourism, and access is very limited. And it was a twist of fate that put me in the lineup with 5 other speakers, and the speakers were the 2006 Nobel laureate, the Peace Prize winner,
Wow.
the chair of the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, one of a leading expert from Yale, and another one from Stanford, all on developing the nonprofit sector. And Saudi Arabia was looking to start the conversation about developing a nonprofit sector. And so I got to when I got to Saudi Arabia, and I got to the hotel that I was staying, there was a big gift on my bed, and I opened it up, and it was this sort of beautiful leather, very fine leather briefcase that was all embroidered on the inside with the King Fahd University, and there was the program for the conference, and I looked at I was the warm-up speaker for the Nobel Peace Prize winner. And the only reason I was in this group was because the person who was supposed to be speaking, when I was speaking, couldn't make it at the last second. There was a guy out of New York, and he's sort of considered the leading expert in that field, and he randomly found me through a circuitous chain of people. And we had conversations, and I had done some work with the Gates Foundation and with the Broad Foundation, and that gave me some credibility in that space, and we had a good conversation. He liked what he was hearing, so he connected me with the organizing committee, and I spoke to somewhere between 500 and 1,000 Saudis. I was translated. I have no idea what they heard, but I spoke for an hour right before the Nobel Peace Prize winner spoke, and I spoke after the chair of the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. So it was, It was an incredible group of people, and the Saudis also treated me like I was a Nobel laureate. And so I had this incredible, just an incredible experience there, where people were showing me all over the place, really treating us like royalty. And it was just purely because of another twist of fate, and I took it, and took the opportunity. So that was the high. The lows, I think the highs and lows are together at times. Certainly achieved, like what I was talking about before, was at the times when it looked like things just were not going to work, weren't going to be able to make payroll, those sort of things, that it was tight. At those same times, it was really, those were really some dark times, but at the same time, they were wonderful because we really formed tremendous bonds with each other, and worked together to get through it. So it was sort of, both sides of the coin, but that, and when I lived in San Francisco, I took a job that I wasn't qualified for, and it was a job that many people wanted, with a package design firm, and this was many years ago. But my design, my creative skills were at the level, and they really liked that. My technical skills weren't, and I was doing work, this was during the print days, doing work for big packaging runs, and one project for Clorox went to, almost went to press with some huge errors, and it was like one of these, it was like a red alert, it was like millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of product development and things like that, and that was a pretty stressful moment for me. It got sorted out ultimately, and I actually bowed out of that job. I respectfully said I wasn't up to it, and we all left on good terms, but those were pretty stressful moments.
Well, those are very, very different. I think those are both very unique stories. I mean, speaking at a conference in front of 500 to 1,000 Saudis, I mean, with Nobel laureates and stuff like that, I mean, that's just awesome. And I can imagine how terrified you'd be, working on packaging for such a mainstream product like Clorox, and just almost costing them millions of dollars of packaging. It's a funny story, but I imagine at the time your whole life was like flashing before your eyes.
Oh, yeah.
So Chris, as far as just backing up a little bit, when we think of a brand, like I mentioned before, we think more of the vehicles, like the logos, the taglines, the colors, etc. Do you have any tips, just super basic, high-level tips on creating an effective logo, finding the right colors, finding a tagline, etc.?
I think that certainly the process you go through should take into consideration other people in the market, how you can differentiate yourself, and doing as little as possible. I mean, it's a tired saying, but less is more. And it also should make you feel something, whatever it is. If it's a name you're selecting, if it's a logo you're designing, if it's colors, if it's any other part of the context that you create, if it feels like it's doing what it's supposed to do, but it's not really doing much else, then you probably don't have anything that will help move you forward without you pushing it. The people really think with their feelings. The intellectual side of things is much less powerful than the emotional side of things. So whatever it is, you want it to have to give someone an emotional response. That's the first response you should have to whatever it is, and then you can intellectualize it and think about what it means, and all of those considerations. But if your logo isn't making anyone feel anything, then it's not doing anything. The same thing with your tagline, same thing with the color and how you're using it, and everything else. But if people are feeling something, then your brand will have a much greater chance of motivating them to do something.
I like it. So, and what would you say is the future of Chief as a company?
So the future of Chief is we're evolving again. I mean, so right now we're down at 19th and Avenue. I know, Jared, you've been to our space there.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And we have just signed a lease. We've just gone through the legal negotiations and signed a lease to get 24,000 square feet right on DuPont Circle.
Wow.
And what we're doing there is we've been, over the last 6 months, we've been working more closely with Rock Creek because many of our clients, because we're just a 10-person firm, we've got a number of really big clients. We've got Sandals Resorts, we've got Paul Newman's Foundation, Newman's Own Foundation. We're working with General Wesley Clark. We're working with a number of other. We're working with Hilton. We're working on their Hampton Inn brand, and we've found that many of these clients want us to extend the relationship further into a much bigger sort of end-to-end type engagement. And so what we've been doing over the last 5 or 6 months is working with Rock Creek to start forming that agency, which will be a real end-to-end agency. So we're going to be doing everything all under one roof, where there will still be the points of distinction around brand, but we're going to be much closer to either the big ad agencies or the bigger PR firms. So we're going to be, we've already started with Newman's Own Foundation. We're handling a lot of marketing for one of their charities, and that's work that that we're doing in with the folks at Rock Creek. So we'll see what happens with our brand. We may develop a new brand for the new agency. Or we may be chief. We'll see. We're in those conversations right now, but it's a really exciting time, and what we've seen is a huge opportunity now that we've stood chief up and proven the concept. Now we need to grow to be able to do much bigger things, and this is the first step in doing that.
Congratulations on your expansion. That's amazing.
Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, it's a busy time.
And what are some of the best resources for starting a business in the DC metro area?
So I think there are lots of there are actually a lot of resources now, and certainly there are tons of meetups, and whatever you're looking to do, it's a good idea to go on the meetup.com or wherever else you can find where other people with like interests are getting together. The other thing is to talk to people, and don't be afraid to talk to people. I think that the thing, I'm always happy to talk to people. I have no time, but I'm still happy to talk to people. I think the way to approach it is, see if someone can give you 10 minutes of their time on a call. I mean, and go after the people who are at the top of the game. See if hey, let them know what you're doing, and be, you have to be really smart about how you're using their time. But if you approach them in a way that that communicates that you're going to be smart about time, and that the initial commitment's not going to be too great, you can almost talk to anyone, and that's a great way to start the process. And by broadening your network in every direction possible, then you open up the possibility of these sort of more chance things happening. I feel like my success has been I've strung together one chance, one chance encounter with one twist of fate, with one something else to make it happen. It's just always being ready to jump and opening up to those possibilities. So, and then and if you're looking to there are lots of VCs in this town. There's a lot of venture capital money in this town. If you have a product idea that you feel is really strong, the one thing that the piece that you want to focus on as much as your product is yourself. The VCs really look at the leadership and how the commitment of the leadership, and they're more concerned about. They almost feel like most ideas could be successful if they've got the right people pushing them. So I would recommend that anyone who's looking to go after funding to really put their own personal house in order and be able to communicate the kind of commitment they're going to bring to whatever the idea is, because the idea itself isn't enough. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of ways to start a business in town. I would say start small. Don't worry about being big. Just go do what you love, and start out of your house, and then we have a lot of people with us right now because we have a much bigger space than we need. We have people who sublet from us, and their rent's not that much, and they can be in an address where there's a lot happening, and and so they're developers and starting new products, and they're all friends. But there's a lot of opportunities like that to get in and sort of cohabitate with others and get in the mix.
Cool, man. That's great feedback. I love it, and I'm definitely I definitely agree that networking is always the way to go. That's like number one. You're not gonna make it happen solely alone. It does matter who you know. And so just on to some random fun questions as we wrap up this interview. Firstly, do you have any favorite books or tools or apps, etc., that you rely on?
So I'm pretty slim with my apps. I mean, I'm relying on the same stuff most people are relying on, like like Uber and Waze and those kinds of apps. I mean, I keep it pretty simple. I mean, actually do a lot of work on my phone, but I do a lot of work in the notes, in the notes function on my phone. And then I'm, this standard social media stuff. I mean, I'm not super active on social media, but I still sort of keep an eye on what other people are up to. The books, what I've found recently, and this has always been sort of my passion. I'm reading a couple of things right now. I'm usually reading two things at once, but I've been reading, going back to some of the classics that were sort of thrust upon us when we were, not ready for them. And I've been on sort of one track, catching up with that. But then on the other track, some of it's business stuff. I'm reading General Wesley Clark's new book because he's a client. I'm reading, Walter Isaacson's The Innovators and those kind of books, and I really enjoy them. But I am also really into sort of the art of literature. So, right now I'm reading Moby Dick again. I read it when I was like in, I don't know, 10th grade, and I couldn't really digest it at the time, and really enjoying it. And there's reading poetry and reading Shakespeare. There's a lot of just tremendously powerful literature as art that I think is probably being consumed less and less as we get into our hyper information world, and it's stuff that's tremendously powerful. So I'm trying to get myself, trying to sort of drill myself back into some of that.
That's awesome. I think we're kindred spirits in that aspect. My degree is in English, and so when I was in college, I would study, Dostoevsky and Tolstoy and all Ernest Hemingway and all of those, all of the eras, the eras in literature, and I loved it. I gained an even more appreciation, as an adult than when I got it when I was a teenager, because of course I didn't understand it, but I love it.
Yeah.
And here's a fun question for you. Let's say you're going to the electric chair tomorrow. What's your last meal?
Oh, last meal. Wow. I'm like kind of full right now, so it's like not feeling quite as good. The last meal, I don't know. That's a tough one. I think I think probably really. I mean, it has to be really good Japanese food, maybe. I mean, the thing is, I like so many different kinds of food that or it could be, we could get some really good Cajun food. I like all kinds of stuff. So I think the meal. I think that's a tough one. I think you could make me happy with a lot of stuff. It wouldn't be pizza or any of that, but I'm pretty easy to please.
Okay. And so, Chris, I got one last question for you, and then you can make some plugs if you want, and then we'll send you on your way. So I'm going to steal this one question from a podcast that I enjoy. It's called Entrepreneur on Fire. And so let's say you wake up tomorrow in a parallel universe identical to this one, but you don't know anyone. Your food and shelter is taken care of, but you have $500 in your pocket and a laptop, and you still know everything you know now. So what would you do?
So I think it's more of I have a vision of myself in an applied art environment. So I mean, I think, and this is something that I still plan to realize in this form, in this universe. But I would really ultimately like to be an artist, and I really like. I did fine art and design both in school in New York, and let the fine art go because I was, very focused on sort of practical survival. And it's something that has never left. I think inside I've always been working as an artist, and it's something that I would drop everything to do. If those circumstances were such that that was possible. But I am even in the process now of considering building a studio behind my house to start that process. But that's it for me. I mean, I love going to. I really like, I love going to the art museums here in town. I love going to the ones in New York, and I like being around artists and in that environment. And so at some point that will be my parallel universe.
Well, definitely one of the more unique answers we've had on the show so far for that. So, I mean, that's very interesting. And so, Chris, we really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much for all of the awesome wisdom you gave us and the great stories and hearing more about you. Do you have any final plugs for things you're working on or, anything like that?
I guess final plug to you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I think that you're a real product of the sort of get up and go and just connect with everybody you want to connect with because that's how we became connected. And you can really do. I mean, I really think that anything is possible. I think that everyone who is out there trying to do something either entrepreneurial or realize their potential in a bigger group. I think you just have to get through the tough slog of the friction that you're going to encounter along the way, and just keep going because it will work out. And I think that for those who can't find the thing that really suits them, you got to create your own. That's the entrepreneurial side. And if there's something out there that fits you perfectly that someone else has already built, join it. I think that those. That's sort of those are the two paths you can take and fulfill yourself. And I know for a fact because I'm far from, I don't think that I have anything really much different than anyone else. It's just you've got to work harder than everyone around you, and that's really the key to success.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate you being on the show and give us all this awesome information. And we'll let you go, but we'll definitely be in touch.
All right, thanks, Jared. Thanks, Jamila.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Okay.
All right.
Bye.